Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder if scrolling through social media actually makes your ADHD symptoms worse? Well, this new study might have a clue. Today we are diving into a really interesting debate about whether problematic social media use and ADHD symptoms are linked over time. So imagine this, a big study came out suggesting that if teenagers spend too much time on social media, it might actually make their ADHD symptoms get a bit worse over time. And this was a pretty big deal. It got a lot of attention, and people started thinking, wow, maybe social media is directly impacting these kids' brains and their ability to focus. But as often happens in science, when one study makes a big claim, others look closely and ask, are we sure about that? That is exactly what happened here. Some researchers looked at the same data that the original study used, and they started to poke around. They found that the original study used a specific way of looking at the numbers called the Random Intercept Cross-Lagged Panel Model, or RI-CLPM. Think of this model like trying to figure out who is influencing whom in a relationship over time. For example, does more social media use lead to more ADHD symptoms? Or does having more ADHD symptoms lead to more social media use? The original study said yes for both directions, but with a stronger claim that social media use led to worsening ADHD symptoms. But here is where things get a little tricky. The researchers who reanalyzed the data pointed out that this RI-CLPM model, while useful, isn't perfect. It can sometimes lead to what they call spurious findings. Spurious just means something that seems real but is actually fake or misleading, like a magic trick. They suggested that maybe the original study's exciting conclusion was actually one of these misleading results. So what did these new researchers do? They decided to be super thorough and try out different ways of analyzing the very same data. They wanted to see if the original conclusion held up no matter how you sliced the numbers. They used a bunch of different statistical models. Some were similar to the original one, but with slight tweaks, and some were completely different. They even used something called the Model of Spurious Longitudinal Associations, or MOSLA. This model is specifically designed to see if the apparent link between two things over time might just be a coincidence. First, they ran the original type of model, the RI-CLPM, and guess what? It did show some links. It suggested that problematic social media use predicted slight increases in ADHD symptoms, and that ADHD symptoms predicted slight increases in social media use. So in this case, it seemed like there was a connection in both directions. But then they tried a reverse model, and this is where things started to get confusing. This model suggested that higher social media use might actually have countered or worked against high ADHD symptoms in a really complicated way. It was like saying if you had high ADHD symptoms, initially having even more social media use might have paradoxically helped you reach the same level of ADHD symptoms later on compared to someone with lower initial ADHD symptoms and lower social media use. It is a bit mind-bending and certainly not the straightforward cause and effect the original study implied. They ran another reverse model. This one looked at whether ADHD symptoms predicted social media use. And again, it showed this peculiar pattern where high ADHD symptoms seemed to counteract high social media use. Then they tried a latent change score model. This model focuses more on the actual change in symptoms over time. And this one showed the opposite of the original finding. It suggested that social media use actually had a decreasing effect on subsequent changes in ADHD symptoms and vice versa. So instead of social media making ADHD worse, it seemed to be making it slightly better, or at least not worse. Finally, they used the MOSLA model. And this is a big one. This model is designed to detect if the link between two things is actually just a statistical illusion. If this MOSLA model fits the data, well, it means the observed connection between social media use and ADHD symptoms might not be a direct cause and effect